I just got done with a 12-hour workday. But the thing is, this isn't the only time I've worked for this long. In fact, I work like this every single day. But the reason I'm able to do this is not down to circumstance, no, but because I've maxed out my discipline. Today, I'll teach you the tricks that will make you so disciplined that you can't stop working, with techniques that are used by CEOs to even US Marines. The first thing we must understand is that there's a reason you struggle to stay disciplined. Basically, to be disciplined, you need a thing called willpower. Willpower is special because usually we do things out of impulse, but with willpower, we can overcome this and do things despite not feeling like it. However, willpower has one very big flaw. Just like petrol in your car, the more you use it, the less you'll have it. And what makes this really bad is that right now, you don't have much at the moment. But the reason this is the case is because something is destroying your willpower. You see this box of biscuits? Well, one day, I wanted to get all of my work done. And I was going well at first, having pushed through 7 hours of work. But then I decided to walk out into the kitchen, and that's when my eyes greeted the box. You might be wondering why this matters. But as I looked at it, I started to get temptation. I wanted to avoid eating these, so I'll use my willpower to resist the temptation. But here's the thing, the more I fought back, the less I was able to work. This is because temptations destroy your willpower. But here's the thing, there's so many urges in your environment, and because of this means that you're wasting around 70% of your willpower every day. Luckily though, there is actually a way you can counter this. So back to my story, the box of biscuits became my vice. I kept eating out of it. I could not resist the temptations any longer. But I still had one trick up my sleeve. What I did is that I grabbed the box and just put it somewhere else, in the cupboard. This actually eliminated my temptations. But right after I did this, my discipline skyrocketed and I was able to get so much work done. This is because my willpower was no longer being attacked. So now you know how to protect your willpower, but here's the problem. You'll still find it hard to be disciplined because in your brain, there's a thing called the prefrontal cortex. This part of your brain regulates your logical thinking. But one study in 2009 took a bunch of people and put them in an fMRI in order to examine the brain activity when they used discipline. They found out that their prefrontal cortex would light up whenever they would use their willpower. This means that people with stronger prefrontal cortexes have stronger willpower. But this is where we run into a massive issue. If you look at your prefrontal cortex, you'll see that it's weak at the moment. That's bad. But I have a solution. Every morning, I do a certain habit that counters this. You see what I'm doing here? That's right, I am meditating. Meditation actually strengthens your prefrontal cortex, which in return will make your willpower a lot stronger. So now your willpower is better than ever. But problem is, you're still not going to be disciplined. This is because you're missing a certain puzzle to the piece. Basically, I'm going to give you two people, and I want you to tell me which one is going to be more disciplined. Welcome Richard and Lewis. Richard and Lewis both have the exact same goal. They want to become rich. But here's the difference. Richard wants to become rich because he thinks it would be cool to own a bunch of supercars, while Lewis wants to become rich because he can barely afford anything. He's broke. Now tell me which one is more likely to be disciplined. I'll give you 3 seconds. Go. Yes, that's right, Lewis. The reason Lewis is more likely to stay disciplined is because of something called the why. You see, Richard only wanted to become rich because he liked the thought of it, while Lewis had a direct reason to work. That's because he's broke. Meanwhile though, if he didn't have this strong why, his brain would not allow him to work at all. But here's the thing, you'll need to find yourself a why like this. So how do we do that? Well, first, we need to find out what makes a why strong. With Lewis, his why was directly connected to solving his problem. This is why so much self-made millionaires were once broke, because being poor became their reason to work. This means that to create a strong why, it has to be about solving a problem. But what makes a why even stronger is that imagine that you have a relative and they're dying of cancer. You meet them at the hospital bed and they're living the last 10 minutes. All you can do at this moment is mourn. Eventually though, while you're gripping onto their hand as tight as possible, they die. This moment will alter your life forever, and you can't really do anything about it. But what if this motivated you to start up a cancer fund? This is what's called a personal why. A personal why is when you pursue a goal because of something close to you, right? You could work to become an athlete because you want to prove someone wrong. Or you could start up a business because you want to prove to yourself that you're not a failure. These whys are often the strongest motivators. And the only requirements are that it's extremely personal. So now that we've got our foundation down, with this foundation, you'll be prepared to tackle your tasks 50% of the time. But this isn't enough. To really make your discipline stronger, it's time to introduce some new tricks. Our first trick is something that's taught in the US Marines. Basically, imagine yourself at the gym for a second. You're hitting the bench press and you start your first set. You're hitting all of your reps, but then as you hit rep 15, your muscles get tired. You try to push yourself through failure, but eventually you give in and you put the bar down. But what if I told you that in that moment, you only used 40% of your strength? This is what's called the 40% rule. At that moment, you could have went to 60% and hit 20 reps. Or you could have went to 80% and hit 25. The way you use the 40% rule is that when you get tired or exhausted, tell yourself that you've only hit 40% of your potential, and then you're going to believe that you can push through to 60%. I do this trick every time and it works. But if you thought that trick was effective, this next one will change how you work forever. Let's look at your goals. We can do something to them that'll make you a lot more productive. Let's say your goal is to finally get an A on your report card. That sounds like a reasonable goal, right? But what if we increase the goal size by 10? Now your goal is to get only A's on the report card. You might be confused because how could you achieve this? Well, here's the thing. When you 10x your goal, you're going to put 10 times the effort into that goal. This is perfect because your smaller goal can now be achieved very easily because of this 10x effect. It's like wanting to achieve 100 subscribers, but you aim for 1K subs and then you just reach 100 effortlessly. So we have the 40% rule and the 10x rule. But this next one is so effective that it's ridiculous. You know how we spoke about willpower earlier and how temptations weaken it? Well, we're gonna do something unusual. So far we know that temptations are harmful to your willpower, but not completely. The only reason they hurt you is because they're everywhere. But what if, after removing your temptations, we do this? I could go back to the box of biscuits, right? And what I could do is that I could grab the box and bring it into my room. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, but what I'm going to do is that I'm going to leave a 10-minute timer on my computer and I'll purposely avoid eating the biscuits. What I'm doing is that I am practicing my willpower. Believe it or not, this helps strengthen your willpower because you're further activating your prefrontal cortex. Just spending 10 minutes doing this is enough to cause your discipline to skyrocket. So now that we've got all of this down, we still have one more trick you need to learn. And this is essential because if you want to be ultra disciplined, you need to learn this. So to achieve your goals, you have a list of actions you take every day. For example, a YouTuber will write scripts in the morning and then do thumbnail work at 12 p.m. But what a lot of people will do is that when they first try to pursue their goal, they'll initially start very well, but after maybe a few days, they'll fall back and become unproductive. But there's a reason this happens. The reason you're not repeating the same actions is because let's think of what a repeating action is. It's a habit, right? That means you want to turn your actions into a habit, but you probably don't know how to do that. Well, what you want to do is that every night before you go to bed, tell yourself what you'll do tomorrow. You want to be doing this because this opens loops in your brain. And the only way you can close those loops is if you get those tasks done tomorrow. Now, that's how to discipline. Subscribe and keep never quitting.